The chandeliers shimmered above a hall filled with laughter, but not every smile was kind. Among the silk gowns and polished shoes stood a girl, new to town, whose presence seemed to unsettle the wrong crowd. Whispers traveled faster than music, and cruel eyes searched for a target. She appeared quiet, fragile, and out of place, exactly the kind of guest they thought they could mock without consequence. What they didn't know was that beneath her calm exterior lay years of discipline, strength, and a secret that would turn humiliation into reckoning before the night was over. The wedding had gathered families from across the state, a union meant to symbolize joy, tradition, and unity. The grand ballroom was draped in ivory linens, with violins carrying soft melodies between tables stacked with golden plates. It was a night when appearances mattered, and guests wore not only their finest clothes, but also their unspoken pride. Among the crowd was a young woman who had only recently moved into the community. She was invited by a distant cousin, not knowing the attention her presence would draw. Her skin tone was the first thing some noticed, as though it didn't belong among the polished marble and expensive perfumes. While most guests offered polite smiles, a certain group of women, dressed in shimmering gowns and dripping with superiority, saw her as entertainment. They whispered behind their manicured nails, eyes narrowing as they measured her against their shallow standards. To them, she was an outsider, new, different, and therefore unworthy of respect. They mistook her quiet composure for weakness. But what no one realized was that this young woman had grown up in a world far harsher than the walls of privilege surrounding that ballroom. She had faced taunts, dismissals, and outright exclusion long before tonight. And while she carried herself with grace, she also carried something else: years of martial arts training, the discipline of a black belt who knew that strength was not about showing off, but about knowing when to stand firm. As the night unfolded, the clash between cruelty and courage was destined to shatter the illusion of elegance. The music swelled as guests swirled around the dance floor, champagne glasses clinking in the background. But the girls' table grew colder as the whispers sharpened into something more sinister. The women's laughter no longer bothered with discretion. Their eyes flicked to her every time a cruel word left their lips. At first, she tried to ignore them. She focused on the couple at the center, radiant with love, reminding herself why she had come. Yet the sting of mockery carried weight. A spilled drink on her gown, a feigned apology delivered with smirks, and snide comments about her hair and accent piled one atop the other. Each act was small enough to be dismissed, but together they painted a picture of deliberate humiliation. Other guests noticed but chose silence. After all, weddings were for celebration, not confrontation. And so the cruelty continued unchecked. The young woman's heart pounded, not with fear, but with the familiar rhythm of control. Years of martial arts had taught her that anger was dangerous, but discipline was power. She reminded herself of the teachings drilled into her muscles. Breathe, observe, wait. Still, there was only so much patience one person could bear. When the bullies escalated, pulling her chair back as she tried to sit, laughter erupting as she stumbled, the tension in the room shifted. The orchestra's notes couldn't drown out the cruelty anymore. People glanced over, pretending not to stare, but their silence became complicity. The women leaned back in satisfaction, believing they had won. To them, she was just another victim of their shallow games. But the girl straightened her back, smoothed her dress, and locked eyes with her tormentors for the first time that night. There was no fury in her gaze, only the stillness of someone who had endured worse and survived. For the first time, the bullies faltered. A silence stretched between them, heavy and unspoken, as though they sensed, without understanding, that the balance of power had shifted. The final insult came when one of the bullies reached out, tugging at her hair as though she were an object of ridicule, not a guest at a wedding. Gasps rippled through the tables nearby. And that was when the quiet girl decided it was enough. She rose from her chair with calm precision, the kind that unsettles those expecting outrage. In that moment, the room seemed to still. The violins played on, but every eye shifted to her, With one step forward, she demonstrated the control of a black belt. Not loud, not violent, but undeniably powerful. She gently but firmly removed the bully's hand from her hair, twisting the wrist just enough to remind her that strength did not always roar. The bully stumbled back, eyes wide with disbelief. The laughter stopped. What replaced it was a stunned silence, broken only by the music echoing against marble walls. The girl's posture remained elegant, her face calm, but her presence now commanded the room. Years of discipline radiated from her stance, every muscle balanced between grace and strength. The bullies tried to cover their fear with smirks, but the audience had shifted. Guests who once ignored the cruelty now saw it in full light. They saw the arrogance crumble when faced with dignity. The girl didn't need to strike, shout, or humiliate in return. Her quiet defense was enough to expose their weakness. In the grand hall, beneath chandeliers meant to symbolize unity, the tables had turned, and everyone knew it. As she returned to her seat, the atmosphere in the hall felt different. No longer was she the outsider, invisible or dismissed. Guests who had turned away earlier now regarded her with new respect. The bullies sat stiff in their chairs, the glow of superiority drained from their faces. The bride and groom, unaware of the details but sensing the shift, sent her a warm smile, as if to remind her that she belonged there as much as anyone. And for the first time that evening, she allowed herself to exhale. Her silence had spoken louder than any retaliation could. She had endured humiliation without surrendering dignity, and when the moment demanded strength, she revealed it with precision and restraint. The lesson hung in the air, unspoken yet undeniable. Cruelty thrives in silence, but dignity dismantles it without a word. As the night wore on, people would remember not the bully's cruelty, but the quiet girl who carried herself with unshakable grace. The chandeliers still shimmered, the music still played, but something had changed. The image of her standing tall would linger long after the last toast. And so the question remains, how often do we stand by while others are humiliated? And how much power could we reclaim if we chose courage over silence?